best anime episode of all time. I'm guessing it's episode 15 of season 1, so let's see.
It's been a while since I talked about my favorite anime. ReZero Season 1 Episode 15 is what I believe to be the single greatest episode of any anime ever. I know that's a very bold statement that you probably disagree with, but hopefully you'll at least hear my argument. Of course, if you're willing to share your opinion, I still read every single comment because I'm always open to changing my mind. I'm not here to argue
Wait,
that
what was that list?
Hopefully you'll at least hear my argument. Of course, if you're willing to share your opinion, I still read every single comment because I'm
Okay.
always open to changing my
Not
mind.
sure what this
I'm
means.
not here to argue that ReZero is the best anime of all time because this episode is admittedly an anomaly. However, it is the best standalone episode I've ever seen, and trust me, I've seen a lot of episodes. I'm
I trust
basically
you.
an anime veterinarian. I watched the entire Fate series in the wrong order, and I've watched all of One Piece except
what a
for the last
guy.
1,000 episodes. I also gave FMA Brotherhood a perfect score of 10 out of 10, even though I watched it
Normie.
over a decade ago and barely remember it. The point is, I know what I'm talking about, so you can totally trust all my opinions about everything.
Okay.
A lot of you might not know this about me, but Echidnut was born as a ReZero only YouTube channel. If you scroll back through my older video,
That's so funny.
Echidnut was born as a ReZero.
That actually, it's perfect. No, it's actually, yeah, but his profile picture is the Emilia one in Tono, not the clown one.
only YouTube channel. If you scroll back through my older videos, all of them are about ReZero.
Wow.
Most of you probably found me through my seasonal videos and tier lists, but I didn't start branching out from ReZero until I hit 100k subscribers.
I
But
see,
because
wow.
I recently hit 200k, I thought I'd make another ReZero video to show all my new subscribers how my channel began. I've come a long way since
That's
then.
cool.
I've made a lot of great friends. While this episode sometimes
I have an add-on that automatically skips a sponsor, by the way. So that's why there was a jump there.
feels like a twisted nightmare intended to emotionally wound the viewer, it's impossible to ignore its beauty and the passion that went into it. Somehow, every detail was impeccable. The short yet excellent fight scenes, beautiful shots, theory-provoking dialogue, and an unrivaled shock value, but of course, the highlight of this episode was its masterfully delivered psychological and emotional impact. The only other episode
this is the one of the episodes I cried so much, by the way. Because the way it was presented, not only because Emilia died, I think the surrounding, like the way it was shown, the way that there was a soundtrack, the way the episode was structured, just completely broke me, right? If it was only like Emilia dying with like Rem dying with bad writing, I would not have cried. You know what I mean?
Any media that compares to this was Breaking Bad's Ozymandias, which had 59 episodes of build-up, allowing it to reach that level.
Wow.
But what allowed episode 15 of ReZero to flourish was the collective passion and genius from every party involved in its
Exactly,
production.
That's what I meant,
direction,
yeah.
music, and voiceover
Exactly,
surpassed
exactly.
the pinnacle of perfection, but for all those pieces to also come together and complement one another was nothing short of a miracle. If this episode
Exactly,
had even
dude.
the tiny
The episode is just amazing. Yeah. Season 18 breakdown so good, and season 2 breakdown again so good, and Rem and the kidnap both saving him. Yeah, exactly.
tiniest flaw, it would have stood out
Damn.
like a sore cock. So I think a lot of luck was involved as well, but the most notable contributor to this episode's brilliance was the groundbreaking standard of cinematography
Exactly.
that ReZero both introduced and retired in this episode.
Retired.
It came out of nowhere, left a dazzling impression, and then disappeared forever. This episode was truly an anomaly that won't be outclassed or replicated anytime in the foreseeable future. As a series, ReZero's primary strength was always the author's exceptional creativity, which naturally made it difficult for the anime to rival the source material. But this episode blew right past it and improved upon it in ways that have never again occurred in this anime. For the first and only time in ReZero, this episode made the source material its bitch. I could talk about it for hours, but I want to keep this video short, so without further hype, let's go ahead and analyze the
That's what I thought when I talk about, like, I prefer, if there is an adaptation out, I prefer watching the adaptation of anime or, you know, whatever adaptation because of voice acting, cinematography, soundtrack. everything adds to the source material and makes it better, right? Sometimes, and I kinda am a little bit mad about that, but sometimes adaptations ruin the source material's image, right? There are a lot of examples of that out there. Now, but I'm in a mindset that adaptation makes a novel better because of all these extra added features that novels can't have, right? So that's why I'm also watching season 4 before I am thinking about reading the novel, right? If there was like season 5 and 6, then obviously I would not read the novel because I always like to watch the adaptation with all these things I mentioned before. But yeah. I just wish that ReZero as an anime has a lot of struggles with adaptation for some reason. They're not adapting the side stories to OVAs for some reason. They're not they are like there are big gaps between seasons. Sometimes the quality is bad. Like what I'm just saying what other people have said, right?
Masterpiece episode that made ReZero my
Sheesh.
favorite anime. Episode 15 picks up after one of the best cliffhangers in the series, where Subaru faces the
Yep.
horrific reality surrounding him, losing every ounce of confidence he'd been slowly building the past few episodes. Remember, this was right after Subaru successfully protected everyone from Meilei's dogs, resolved Rem's internal conflict, and stood up for Emilia in front of practically the entire kingdom. He had some giant balls, is what I'm trying to say. It must have been June, because Subaru's pride was at an all-time high.
Sheesh.
However, this attack on the mansion erased it completely.
Yeah.
Notice how he tries to cling to his pride by reassuring himself that it's not his fault. Betelgeuse later corrects this notion when he forces Subaru to look at Rem's corpse, informing him that it is his fault. Ironically, Betelgeuse also asks him if he's pride, which was amusing because in that moment Subaru had none at all. But anyway, Subaru investigates his surroundings, finding everyone he cares about brutally massacred. Of course, this episode skips the opening, because at this point the audience is completely immersed, feeling as if we're right there with Subaru, experiencing the dreadful realization that all our waifus are dead. Although, I guess that isn't too bad, considering my waifu has been dead for 400 years at this point, but my point is that it would have been irritating if they stuck the opening right in the middle of that.
Yeah,
Plus,
true,
giving the audience
true.
time to process what they were shown probably would have broken the immersion. I know that might seem insignificant, but when we're talking about a masterpiece, every detail matters. Subaru dies a mysterious death and then respawns again at the Appa salesman, looking even more confused than us viewers. He's obviously traumatized, yet conscious enough to hug Rem out of pure desperation, giving us viewers our only moment of relief in the entire episode.
That
Rem's
one
character was
single
beginning to
moment
shine a
as
lot
well.
more at this point in the story, but this part of the episode did a fantastic job emphasizing how valuable Rem is to Subaru. It's heartbreaking, bittersweet, and uncomfortable to watch because us viewers and Subaru both know that something terrible awaits her, and the outcome isn't likely to improve if Subaru remains in his current state.
Yeah,
The
state of
previous
shock.
arc spent a lot of time building
Traumatized.
up Rem's animosity towards the witch cult, making her confrontation with them here a lot more significant. Rem finally comes face to face with the source of all her life's hatred, yet all she cares about right now is protecting Subaru. So instead of hatred, she's fighting the witch cult because of love, and I thought that was pretty poetic. Also, this brief action sequence was beautifully choreographed and very visually pleasing. Anyway, after the witch cult was built up for 15 episodes, we finally get to meet one of its leaders, which recontextualizes everything we've been hearing about the organization and puts a face to the villains in our imagination. But we already know that the witch cult is evil and crazy, so Betelgeuse fit the description we imagined he would have, yet he still shocked us despite meeting our
I
expectations.
know, right? There was like no twist whatsoever, right there. But it's still because Betelgeuse is such a character that we were still shocked, even though we were expecting something like this going to happen. Also, like I said, I don't think nothing in the show is black and white, so they're not like Disney villain evil either. I guess we're gonna have like more revelations, you know?
Also, if Betelgeuse was in any other anime, he probably would have been laughed at. In theory, his character is so
Poor
over
guy.
the top
I feel
and
bad
silly,
for
it
him.
should have been a challenge to take him seriously and almost impossible to be afraid of him. But instead, what ReZero gave us was the greatest introduction to a villain
I
in anime
know,
history.
right?
Until now, the focus of this episode was Subaru's broken mental state, but Betelgeuse makes him look totally sane in comparison.
I know,
He quickly
right?
establishes himself as the
I feel
ultimate
so bad
maniac
for
who
him,
spews
dude.
out ridiculous nonsense about love and sloth, and yet, somehow, a lot of it makes sense. Betelgeuse has this obsession with the witch that feels oddly reminiscent of Subaru's obsession with Emilia. So when Subaru grows to hate
Drawing
Betelgeuse
parallels
later
between
this
him
episode,
and
he doesn't
Betelgeuse.
realize that what he hates is essentially an extreme version of himself. But symbolism aside, even though
Yep.
everything about Betelgeuse feels wrong, his
Yep.
dialogue holds a certain weight, unfitting for that of a madman. For example, one sentence from Betelgeuse was enough to convince 90% of the fanbase that Subaru is the Archbishop of Pride. Alright, that's a bad example, but Betelgeuse can sound oddly reasonable with the right context.
Funny.
Despite his willingness to kill his own followers over nothing, self-harm for no reason, and torture his victims while mocking them, I think the scariest thing about Betelgeuse was actually his intuition. He accuses Subaru of faking his insanity because although Subaru was clearly traumatized, for some reason his reactions were normal. He was sane enough to feel comforted by Rem, scared of Betelgeuse, and angry when Rem was tortured. A crazy person would have been unaffected by all of that, so from the perspective of Betelgeuse, Subaru was acting.
Yeah, because traumatized and being crazy are two different things, right?
It's left unclear whether or not Subaru was doing so intentionally, but Betelgeuse was right. The narration in the novel makes note of Subaru's apparent separation from reality,
Wow,
which
look at
was
that.
really just a state of extreme shock. While in shock, Subaru could have subconsciously acted crazy or even convinced himself he was crazy, most likely as a means of escapism. Ironically, most of us started watching ReZero as a means of escapism.
True.
But the true significance of Subaru's mental state was how perfectly Betelgeuse understood it. Just by watching him, Betelgeuse immediately recognized all of his weaknesses, including his false insanity. And that was a very frightening bit of characterization for Betelgeuse. My point, though, is that the author could have just written Subaru as insane, and that would have made sense to all of
Nope.
us. But
The author is one of the authors of all time. I'm just saying. Like, I have learned so much in these extra content videos after season 2 that the author, I'm convinced, is a writing genius. You know what I mean? He is a genius.
it's these minor details like characters having psychological ambiguity that allowed ReZero to introduce such a goofy, obnoxious villain
Exactly.
in a terrifying, magnificent way.
Like,
It was
it shouldn't. Betelgeuse's character should not work, but it worked in this context because the author made it work, and thank God the studio actually adapted it really good, right?
very in your face and cartoonish,
Because
but
actually the studio, the anime, made it better.
that only made the few moments when Betelgeuse didn't seem crazy a lot scarier.
Yeah.
The first time we saw, or didn't see, his authority of sloth was absolutely horrifying.
Yep.
After about
Yep.
7
That's
minutes
so
of him
true.
spazzing out like your dog does when you get home, Betelgeuse gets really calm all of a sudden, the music stops, and then
Yeah.
something happens to Rem. Nothing can replace that what the fuck feeling of confusion, despair, and hopelessness. The
That's so
sudden
true.
realization that Betelgeuse had a supernatural ability this entire time, along with the emotional impact of watching Rem lose after a whole arc built her up and forced us to love her, amounted to an incredible moment. The torture scene that follows it was brutally gruesome, yet not nearly as disturbing as the mockery that makes it impossible for us to not hate Betelgeuse.
Yeah.
What this episode did best was convey powerful emotions to the viewer effortlessly, and if you weren't already a Rem fan at this point, then her dying breath confession turned you into one. Absolutely
I know, right?
heart-wrenching, and of course these emotional moments were only made possible by the voice acting and the music.
Exactly.
Subaru's visceral cries encapsulated that feeling of absolute desperation, but had Betelgeuse's VA not delivered one of the greatest vocal performances ever, this episode couldn't have been the masterpiece that it was. The voice acting had to transcend perfection, and it absolutely did. As for
Round
the
of applause for the voice actor. I swear, dude. I swear.
music, it's always amazing in ReZero, but Kenichiro Suehiro's greatest masterpiece is called Requiem of Silence. It's one of the most powerful works ever composed, and to this day, I can't listen to it without getting emotional. In any other episode, this song would have felt out of place because the episode wouldn't have been worthy of having it. Yet, as if the stars aligned, every beat felt like it fit each individual frame of this final sequence and built a beautiful bridge to this episode's conclusion. With one of the greatest soundtracks ever playing behind him, Subaru carries Rem's lifeless body as he journeys aimlessly towards the mansion. Why exactly? I wasn't sure, and neither was Subaru. With Rem dead, he should understand that there's no reason for him to continue the current loop. Several episodes ago, when Rem died from the curse, Subaru jumped off the cliff, killing himself to bring her back to life.
I don't think Subaru was functioning at all. That's
continue
why.
To step forward meaninglessly towards an uncertain destination, carrying Rem's body through the snow until somehow he reaches the mansion and then faces the destruction he previously wanted to hide from. And until then, Subaru didn't know his hatred for Betelgeuse was the reason he continued living. But again, because Betelgeuse is the symbolic extreme of Subaru's character flaws, a lot of that hatred was redirected to himself. And just when we think this episode has already made us feel every emotion possible, we get mind-pucked.
I know, mind-pucked.
Bursts out of the mansion, delivers mysterious dialogue, Subaru's head falls off, the credits roll down, the music intensifies, the snow piles up, and we all just sit there staring at our screen through our tears, wondering what the puck just happened.
Exactly.
How we felt at the end of that episode was exactly how Subaru felt at the beginning. They even added a little scene after the credits to show the progress Subaru made and the lesson he learned. The episode was structured like a movie because it resembled one in quality. But due to the emotional toll this episode inflicted, Puck's Beast of the End reveal was almost unsurprising, simply because it looks like it belongs in a nightmare, and this episode had already convinced me I was having one.
Yeah.
What shocked me more than the big monster, though, was the cinematic brilliance of the credit roll, which was also the moment I realized I was in the middle of watching my favorite
That's so
anime.
true, by the way. It looks so unique.
Not only was I amazed by what this episode meant for the story I just became extremely invested in, but also how its quality transcended anything I'd ever seen before. After the roller coaster of emotions they packed into what was already a masterpiece, the way it concluded was beyond my comprehension. Honestly, if the series ended right there, I wouldn't have been mad because I knew immediately that nothing would ever top this episode. A lot of ReZero fans prefer episode 18.
Really?
And believe me, that's also one of the best anime episodes I've ever seen. But episode 18 isn't shit compared to this one. And they knew that too.
Is that actually like discussion which is the best episode? Because for me it always has been episode 15 and recently season 2 episode 24 and then maybe season 1 episode 18, right? I guess this was made after season 2, but they're considering the best episode in season 1, which is obviously I think 15. What do you guys say, 15 or 18? I remember people hating Subaru for the answer he gave. I love Emilia.
ReZero doesn't do rolling credits unless they know they've made a truly phenomenal episode, or if they're trying to replicate one. The Value of Life, for example, was certainly a phenomenal episode,
It was
supposed to rival the quality of episode 15 and was even modeled after it. It copied the exact structure of season 1's masterpiece, yet couldn't match its quality. Although The Value of Life did become one of ReZero's best episodes, it's also evidence that episode 15 can't be replicated. Of course, the production team was different, but I don't think even the original team could make another episode 15. Like I said, it felt like a miracle.
The stars aligned.
Every element complemented the others as flawlessly as they did, and I'm not saying the quality was accidental, but I do think a certain degree of luck was necessary to accomplish that. I'm a huge fan of ReZero, and I really loved season 2, but what it lacked was a distinctive masterpiece episode. And Omega, but anyway, I'm not...
Yeah, I mean, Omega plot twist could have made season 2 finale so much better than it was. Season 2 finale, I felt it was lacking a little bit. For me, it's 15 and 18 when the Echidnut episode, There's a Bird of Christ, finally getting to share his pain. Oh. From season 2, yeah, my favorite season 2 episode is season 2 episode 24. And then season 2 episode, what he said, right? The one with the white rabbit for the first time that was trying to be like episode 15. Damn. Episode 15, yeah, I mean, I think like you said, the stars aligned, and there are moments in anime where I'm like, holy shit, like, will I ever see something better than this? Like, have I actually considered peak of the peak and I will never be satisfied with anything else? And there's all like I do think that in the past about some stuff in other shows, and whenever I pick up new shows, also when I picked up ReZero, I was shocked and I witnessed peak. But I feel like every show is unique. So for me, I don't think there ever can be like the best show. You know what I mean? Every show is unique, but I feel like there can be best episodes in shows. Anyway, yeah, this was the best episode. I agree. Also, check out Echidnut, please. He makes incredible videos. It's my third video I watched from him, so like his video as well.